Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 12th of May, 2024. It's been a hot one this weekend, hasn't it? It has been very, very warm. Hope you are doing well, though. Hope you're having a great weekend. It's certainly been a very good weekend for gardening. Now, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. What are your preferred methods of gardening? Could be a permaculturist, you could be a no digger, you could be a standard gardener. I don't know what it is. They're just some of the things I can think of off the top of my head. We're going to get into that in just a moment, but first of all, let's see if anybody is out there. Over on Instagram, I can see the little black and white cat joined, as has Seed to Table Plot 13. Welcome along indeed. However, on YouTube, Adrian is there saying hello to Richard and all. Hello to you. Seed to Table Plot 13 is also there. Good evening, all. Fantastic weather this weekend. Indeed, it has been. Turbo Stream, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. We have got allotted chef in brackets, Nathan. Good evening, all. What a glorious weekend for gardening. Indeed, it has been. Fantastic. Stuart Jackson, evening, Richard and Veg Army. Last sunshine for more than a couple of days. Let's hope it comes back soon. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. We need this sunshine, don't we? Hargrave Gas says, evening, everyone. Hope you've had a great week. It's got to up to 36 degrees in my greenhouse today. That can't be good. It's not good, but it's not bad at the same time. That's all I would say. Digwell says, hi all, thundering here now, rain next week, back to normal. It's the British summer. We're not quite in summer, but you know what I mean. British spring summer. Anna Jones, good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Digwell is there. Anything over 27 degrees C is bad for tomatoes, with 32 degrees stopping fruit formation. One reason I grow outdoors. Something to think about there, isn't there? Stuart says, another great sale this weekend, around £290 raised for the brain tumour charity, just £600 this year so far. Fantastic. Fantastic. I've seen there's quite a few plant sales this weekend. 290 quid in just one weekend. That is fantastic, gotta say. Digwell says, nice one, Stuart. Moneyboot says, evening all, just got home from Malvern show. Raining on way home, summer is over. It's not raining here just yet, but who knows what could happen. How was Malvern, though? How was Malvern? Anna Jones says, brilliant to Stuart. Indeed. Chili Phil says, evening all, just back from our second trip of the day to the allotment. Made it back in time. Excellent stuff. 2 trips a day to the allotment is a good weekend. Good day, I should say. My dad has joined. Good evening. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. Stuart Jackson, thanks and well done to you. Digwell. Turbo Extreme says, all this warm weather and I'm bobbling about with a stick after putting my back out. Oh, hope you're okay, my friend. Hope your back is okay. Jenny says, hello, everyone. Hope you are well. I've been marking out the new cottage garden ready for raised beds, etc. Loads more sowing and potting to do over the next week. Haven't we all got that to do? Lots of sowing, lots of potting to do. Amanda's joined, says, evening all. From Amanda, good evening to you. Turbo Stream says, I was planning on Malvern today, but could hardly walk, so gave it a miss. And Turbo Stream also says, well done to Stuart. Quick check over on Instagram. CJ Grows has joined. Welcome along. So let's get into it, shall we? What we're going to discuss today. This was a suggestion. I think it was Nigel's suggestion for this topic about what type of gardening style do you do and why. I thought this was quite a good subject to talk about, in all honesty. I thought, it's got a few different ideas, a few different things that we can all talk about and sink our teeth into. So I thought, to get this conversation going, what I would do is share what I try and do, because I don't really adhere to any one particular style. I guess one thing I would say, I don't know much about permaculture, but it's what I know about it would probably tally up with the style that I stick to, and my understanding of it kind of makes a lot of sense. I cannot explain permaculture. It's one of those, it's pretty simple, but trying to explain it isn't. So I'll just explain what I do. Obviously, I practice no-dig gardening. don't dig over my soil or anything. I just allow plenty of compost to go onto the soil, and I mulch with compost if available. If I haven't got compost, then quite often it is grass clippings or straw as well. Anything at the moment I can lay my hand on. Audio lagging like Kung Fu movie, Richard. Lagging a bit. I'm just going to check. It should be coming from the correct. Just checking. Default micro. Yeah, it should be coming through. I don't know why that's happening. Don't know why that's happening. Sorry, Digwell. Don't know why we're getting that delay. Although I can see a bit of a delay on the camera as well. We'll just have to go with it. Beddoes has made it now, so you can start. Evening all. Good evening, Beddoes, and welcome along. But yeah, I adhere to the no dig approach. I don't think yearly digging over the soil is a good thing to do. It just doesn't make sense. I remember as a school kid, for 10 years old, we did this experiment where we filled a jar up with soil, and then we put leaves in the top, and we watched as the worms just pulled all those leaves down. That kind of made sense to me. So that's what I carried on doing since. But also, I do a lot of mulching. I'm at this year at home. I'm probably doing more of the roof stout method with mulching, which is where you basically use any material you have to mulch: straw, grass clippings. I want to use solely compost because I think that is best, but trying to be able to bring in or build enough compost is where I'm struggling at the moment. I don't want to import compost. I want to try and make it all on site. I believe it can be done. I've just got to try and do it the right way. So that's two of the methods I stick to: no dig / mulching. I try and also adhere to the rule that if I haven't got anything growing, then I will plant, or I try and have something growing in all my beds at all times. If it's not edibles, then it will be things like green manures to add nutrients to the soil, or anything like that. So that's the three methods I kind of stick to. Over to you to let me know what you do yourself. Turbo Extreme says that I don't dig as such, but I'm not a no dig either. I do mulch, but also cultivate the top layer with a hoe and a 3-tone cultivator. I don't think running the hoe through the top layer is not no dig. I would class that as still being no dig. It's the soil, the mulch layer. If you're running a hoe through the mulch layer, you're not disturbing the soil. Therefore, you're leaving all that life in the soil. The mulch is all you're running the hoe. So I don't think that's not no dig, but I'm willing to be corrected on that if I'm wrong. Digger says no problem. I'll squint. Talking about the lagging, I don't know why it's going on. There's a bit of a problem. I think the screen's looking a bit overcast as well for some reason. Kate says, good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson says, I do no dig at home, and we are trying to do the same at school. Also, we only use peat-free compost along with homemade compost. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I think I went peat-free a few years ago. I would say I'm a peat-free gardener, but I'm trying to use homemade compost as much as I possibly can. I only really want to use or buy in compost to use for young plants when potting up or for plants in pots. That being said, I think garden soil could do a lot of good, but you need to dig it out. But yeah, that's it. Added to that, I also do grow things in pots as well, not just in the ground. I do grow a lot of things in pots. Nigel says, don't knock dial up, it's coming back. Talking about the lagging. Is it coming back? Is it coming back? Just have a quick look over on Instagram. Claire Growing Plotty has joined. Welcome along. And allotment plot 25. Welcome along. Jenny says, my style is with nature and for wildlife. No straight lines, no group planting, no rules followed. Trees, shrubs and flowers are all mixed with the fruit, the veg and fruit. No nets, no fleece, no sprays, etc., etc. Yeah, You know what? That has kind of reminded me of something else I wanted to throw in there, actually. Yeah, I try and work with nature as much as possible. I don't use pesticides. I don't use netting because I want to encourage the wildlife. It is a battle at the moment, though. I've got to admit, it is a battle. Slugs and snails are decimating my garden. The what are they called? White fly has caused a lot of problems this year. It's been a real struggle to garden without using pesticides this year, but we're doing it. I'm sticking with the grazers. We are slowly winning that battle. Turbo Stream says, I will dig a well-rooted weed and I dig the parsnips and potatoes out where needed. Excuse me. Excuse me. Again, I think that's necessary. That's still part of no dig gardening. You know, I think that the term no dig gardening can sometimes be misleading because I think people believe that you don't dig out to plant a plant or anything like that, or dig out your potatoes and things. You still got to do that. It's just the annual where people would dig out a load of soil, dig in loads of compost. That's what's avoided with no dig gardening. Jenny says lots of habitat, water and flowers and pollinators and frogs. My little veg army, 100% peat free and organic. So Jenny is more of a wildlife gardener, grown vegetable with wildlife. I think that's quite a good way of doing it, actually. I do like that. Andy's Bucket Gardening says, I try to dig as little as possible. Feed the soil with compost, microbes, cover crops, etc. Peat free, of course. So another one for no dig gardening and again dig the soil as little as possible. That's probably a better way of phrasing it, isn't it? And using cover crops and green manures and things like that. Another person that I like. Claire Growing Potty over on Instagram says, hey Richard, I've just put dahlia in next to the rhubarb, aka Snail City. I feel a fail in the offing. And she goes on to say hi, Jenny, as well. Unfortunately, I can't bring the comments on Instagram up. But yeah, rhubarb does seem to attract snails, doesn't it? I think that might be why I'm getting so many so many slugs and snails near my rhubarb. My young plants need a rhubarb. I think we're going to dig out our rhubarb one day. Coming up quite soon, I think, or hopefully this year. What have we got? So Turbo Extreme says, I'm mindful of my weak back, so we'll still stay away from traditional digging. I was digging out brambles, though, so it's no wonder it's sore. So I don't know if anybody, talking of brambles, I don't know if anybody's been watching Clarkson's Farm. He came up with a great idea for trying to reduce the brambles. It's not suitable for any of us, but using pigs and goats to reduce the amount of brambles and things like that, which I think, again, that's a great idea. But for us, we cannot have goats and pigs on our allotment. So I think we've got to imitate it. And what I mean by that, when it comes to things like brambles, cut them down at ground level and then just hoe them constantly, daily, so they never pot up any foliage, any stems. That way, they will soon die out. They can't photosynthesize. It's all a case of just getting that hoe working through that soil constantly. Digwell says, I practice no dig basically. No rules. I use as much peat as I can and I'm stockpiling like mad. Glad there is a slight relaxation in the rules. I know Digwell and many of you actually do have or have found that peat-free compost is nowhere near as good as peat-based compost, which I think is quite a valid thing. It's just a shame. Is it a shame they get rid of peat free? I don't know. This is something I'm very conflicted with, but I would say I've gone peat free. Now, Amanda says, I am a digger, I think just out of habit, as I learned from my granddad. Next time I have a good amount of homemade compost, I'm going to try a little no-dig bed. I keep organic and peat-free, although I'm still struggling with peat-free compost. I follow your method, Richard, of weeding every plot trip. I just pop the new ones out, and it helps keep on top of it. I need to get more disciplined at feeding, though. Yeah. I again, that's another one of my methods I have to throw in there, little and often, as it's called. I try and visit my allotment and my vegetable garden. Well, my allotment at least once a day, my vegetable garden twice a day, and I just find that just constantly pulling out the odd weed helps keep on top of it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it certainly doesn't let the weeds take control, if that makes sense. It's me on top of taking control of the weeds by doing little and often. Just going to check Instagram quickly. Um, Claire says, "Oh, stick your bum out like you're deadlifting. That helps with the bending." Talking about the digging. Uh, Yeah, keep your back straight is what you're saying. Stick your bum out. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Trying to dig the soil by keeping your back straight. That does make a lot of sense, actually. What else have we got? Seed to Table 13 says, I know dig mulch. I'm trying this year to mix flowers in amongst the veg. No chemicals or nasties. Generally wing it and plant it and hope for the best. A wing and plant it. That's a common style of gardening now, isn't it? You just wing it and plant it and hope for the best. Personally, I think that falls into the category of you learning as you go. You learn from mistakes. You find out what works, what doesn't work. So you say wing and plant. I call it experimental gardening and learning as you go. Nigel, I am a traditional digger. I enjoy the exercise and more than happy with the crops that I harvest. Now, that's interesting. That is very interesting, Nigel, because you're the only person that I've seen so far that has said they're a traditional digger. So I'm going to throw this out. I'm going to get everybody to just put a comment up. If you're a no digger, put a no digger. If you're a traditional digger, put traditional. Everybody answer that question quickly and we'll go through these comments. Instagram, nothing going on. A few more people joined. Our Plant Stories podcast has joined and Garden of Whedon Allotment has joined. Jenny says, it took me 2 years to get the perfect balance. It requires patience, but so worth it. E.g., I saw one black slug last year, but hundreds of leopard slugs. I've got lots of black slugs this year. I feed them to the chickens. That's what I've started, or I've always kind of done. I feed slugs and snails to the chickens. I try and encourage the birds in to tackle them, and I use the grazer spray on my plants to stop my plants from eating them or deter them from eating. Does not, it is a battle at the moment. Excuse me, I've had a horrible cold this week and it's taken a lot of my energy out. Rebecca says, good evening, Richard. It's been a busy few weeks, so nice to sit down and watch tonight. Lovely to see you, Rebecca. I've wondered where you've been. I hope you were okay. Lovely to see you. Turbo Extreme says, unlike Jenny, I do like a straight line of crops. I must have some kind of OCD. I've got to admit, I'm not. When I see straight line of crops, I like how they look, but I can never do it in my own garden. I can never do it on my allotment. For me, I just don't have the patience to try and make them straight. So I'm very much a throw it in and see what happens. But when I do see the straight lines, I do think they look quite good. Rob says, I read in the news that peat will be on sale for another 5 years. Interesting. Allotted chef. On the plot, I practice no dig and old school traditional bed systems. Bed systems, that's a style I haven't discussed. Obviously, I stick with a bed system. I do rotate my crops as well. Certainly on the allotment. At home, yeah, I do rotate my crops here at home, just not in quite the same way as on the allotment. But do you rotate the crops? No, question. Anna Jones, I'm a neat freak too. I must have straight lines. Love it, love it. I do like straight lines. I just don't have the patience, I'll be honest. Money Boots says quite a few soil merchants have said they will phase it out over a time when suitable replacements are available. Turbo Stream says, I do like a good mulch low. Pity we are not getting any more leaf drops. So I'm on a composting mission now. Yeah, we're getting wood chip delivered to our allotment more regularly, which is fantastic. And I think that makes a lot of difference. I know Turbo Stream used to get a lot of leaves delivered to his allotment, and that made a huge difference to his allotment. Instagram Agriton UK has joined. Hello and welcome. Rob says, I don't think they will ever find a replacement for peat free. Interesting. A replacement for peat, that is. Graham Plotty, there we go, on YouTube now instead. Welcome along. Thank you for joining. Beto says, my Coleman sells peat. That's interesting. I wonder if the stuff used for heating or fuel can also be used into compost. I'm not advocating it, by the way. I'm just wondering. What else have we got? Nigel says, my local allotment show does not stock peat free. Just bought 9 times 60-litre bags for 30 quid. Fantastic. I mean, I've got to admit, the compost I've been trialing this year, I'm impressed with so far. The compost I used last year from the range, I was impressed with it last year, but the condition of it now has really deteriorated. So I'm using some other brands of compost now, I've got to say. Jenny says, I still haven't been to my allotment. I assume it's still there. It's not been for weeks. Hopefully the weeds are not my height. Fingers crossed. I know you've been having some issues, so hope everything's sorted. Graham Plotty, yeah, I've been doing more deadlifting than gardening recently. Oops. Yeah. Yeah. Think Digwell also says you look like a silverback gorilla when you dig/lift, etc. Perhaps that'll stop my trousers falling down as well. I do tend to have that problem. What is that? Graham Plotty says I'm no dig. Fantastic. Allotted Chef says both. Anne says she's a traditional. Seated Table says no dig. Anna Jones, traditional. Digwell says no digger with changes. Graham Plotting, the black slugs love munching sunflowers. Tillyville says just a gardener. Don't categorize what we do as either, but of everything, I guess. Amanda's a traditional no dig. Rob's a no dig. Anybody else saying that? It seems like the majority of us are no diggers, but only just. There's still quite a few traditional diggers out there. Now, nothing wrong. I'm of the belief, and I'm going to get this out in the open now. I'm of the belief that I will do what I do, you do you, and I don't care. I'm not going to criticize or have a go at anybody for doing something differently to what I do. We are all different gardeners. We can all try differently. I know there's some people out there, not in this group admittedly, but there are some people out there that do get very funny when people dig the soil or anything like that. We don't do that here. We are pretty much all you do you, we do we. That's my attitude. Nigel says straight line planting makes weeding with a hoe much easier. That is very true. I have to say, yes, it is much easier. I like to pack my plants in a little bit tighter though, so that the weeds, in theory, don't get much room to grow. May not necessarily be the best idea on such a weedy plot, but that's my sort of thinking on it. But I do like straight lines. It just don't have the patience. Chili Kate says, I dig if I need to dig with a mindfulness that I don't want to dig for the sake of it. But when you are fighting against bindweed, I believe it is necessary. Yeah, bindweed and couch grass are my biggest problems, but I have learned it takes a while to get on top of the couch grass. But with my method of where I rotate my crops, I grow potatoes. When I dig out the potatoes, I remove as much of the weeds as possible. After the potatoes go in, the brassicas and couch grass doesn't quite like the lime, so that helps knock it down. And then, of course, no dig thrown in that with green manures does get on top of the couch grass. By the time the potatoes come back round after the 4th year rotation, the couch grass does start to come back, but we are getting on top of it slowly. Um, Graham Plotty says, I'm not an accomplished hoe driver, though. I decapitate stuff. We all do it, don't we? We don't do it. We all do it. Jenny says, I don't weed with a hoe. Mind you, I don't weed. Love, I do weed with a hoe as much as I possibly can, but I also like getting down and pulling weeds out with my hands more than anything. Turbo Stream says, I'm no dig at home, but then it's just flowers. I will be digging out a few shrubs to make it more of a woodland garden. So we're focusing a bit too much, for my liking, on no dig or traditional digging. What other methods of gardening do you use? Do we have any permaculturists out there? Anybody, excuse me, that practices permaculture? There's something I've wanted to learn more about. I probably should go get a book from the library and read up on it. Actually, that might be the best way to understand it better. What I understand is permaculture is all about systems and things like that, which would line up with everything that I like. Um, just looking at these comments. Rob says people still use peat for heating at home. Yeah, they do. They do. As always, it's us gardeners that are the ones that are punished for a wide variety of things. It's the same as hosepipe bans. We tend to keep water butts for our gardens anyway, yet we get hit with hosepipe bans. Turbo Stream says, I get some peat blocks from my brother's friend in Ireland when they use it as fuel. Yep. Can you mix it in with compost though? Digwell says, I do straight lines, but not all the straight same crops in the lines. Onions with brassicas, for example. Companion planting, that's another style of gardening. That's something we could discuss as well. Seed to table, Scott says, I brought some Westland Boost peat-free compost today and it looks good, but time will tell with the results. Looking forward to seeing how that works out. No dig and I can't dig, so that's handy, says Jenny. Indeed. Digwell says it has to be straightish lines to allow weeding, even with no dig. Straightish is what I would class myself as. I don't get a string out and try and make sure it is perfectly straight. I throw them in what I by eye, if you like, and try and make sure they are straight. Anne says she's got too much bindweed and not enough compost to be no dig. Yeah. It is a problem, isn't it? Bindweed. I'm getting quite a bit of bindweed on the allotment at the moment too, as well, funny enough. I made a planting stick marked every 3 inches, make spacing plants out easy and in lines. Planting sticks are always little rulers and things like that, always make life just a lot easier. What have we got? Right. Joe's Patches joined a little late, long day getting jobs done before the rain comes back. Pretty much no dig, but not super strict on it. I like to garden with nature in mind. Peat free is quality and it definitely is hit and miss. And Bethan says, evening all, just got back from Malvern. It was a fab day, much bigger than I thought it was going to be. I remember when I went to Malvern, I was amazed how big it was. Benno says, hosepipe ban and no watering lawns here. Fill up watering can to water like everyone else, even though the site uses its own well. So that brings us up quite nicely onto another thing that I guess I want to ask about. When is this a method of gardening? I'm going to throw this in as a method of gardening. What do you use to water your garden? Do you use a hose pipe on the mains? Do you use rainwater? Do you use watering cans? Do you not water at all? And that's kind of tallies up with the method of gardening that I think we're talking about. For me, I don't use a hose pipe. I do have a hose pipe for things that we might have to wash out and you need a bit of pressure, but I don't use a hose pipe. I'm solely use rainwater, hence why I got 16 water butts here at home. But I do a lot of mulching and that does keep moisture in the soil really, really well. At the moment, the straw mulch that I've placed outside is amazing, absolutely amazing. But we're practicing with a few other things as well to try and make our growing much more successful. What have we got? Nigel says, we missed you to Bethel. If you think Malvern is big, you must go to Hampton Court. Oh, Hampton Court soon as well, isn't it? Digwell says, I cleared my first plot of bindweed just by picking the stems every time I saw them. gone in 3 years. Little and often again, isn't it? Little and often. That's the best way. I think it's the best way of tackling a lot of the stuff that we have on our allotments, our weeds and stuff. Seed to table plot 13. The idea of moon gardening, I think that's meant to mean sowing and planting depending on the phase of the moon. I think I've not looked into that too much, to be honest, but I think a lot of that is just about doing or setting you have to do it. So you have to do it on that certain day. So it makes it a top priority job. I think it's more about being organized with that, but that's just my theory. Hose and can don't currently have facilities to save water, says Joe's Patch. On the allotment, I can use a hose pipe and quad pots. Are those what are they called? Arrow pots. I've got a discount code, so I should remember it. I'll get into that later. Jenny says, I use my own take on polyculture. I water with a can, but we'll use a hose when I physically struggle, understandably. We have swales around the vegetable beds and keep the soil covered. Swales, that's another thing from permaculture. Something else that is quite interesting. Turbo Stream says, I have 3 water butts and we have water baths from main water. I will only water if it's really dry or the plants are young. I've got to admit, that's not a bad idea, actually. Nigel says, hosepipe watering can depends on what I am watering. Rob says, at home I use a hose, watering can, and automatic watering system for my hanging baskets. Fantastic. Turbo Stream says, no hose pipes on our allotments, though, so cans only anyhow. Fantastic. Excuse me. What have we got? Rob says self-watering pots. Yes, I've got some self-watering plots from is it Quad Pots? I can't remember the company. I'll check the email in a second. I've got a discount code if anybody is interested in them. New water butt arrives tomorrow for the cottage garden. The allotment has water dip troughs and a natural well that we can use. Yeah, on our allotment, we also have water dip troughs, which I do use purely because we're only allowed 2 watering butts on the allotment, and that just isn't enough. It really is not enough. Kate says, great thing about having my new garden at home is being able to water easier and get compost as well. On the allotment, we didn't have hose pipes, so it was hard going. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people who have had trouble watering their plots when they rely on hose pipes or on watering cans. I personally don't mind it. It just takes a lot longer, doesn't it? That's why I think mulching really does come into its own. Graham Plotty says, I've got 2 IBC and 3 butts, not all from the deadlifting. I mean, we're not allowed IBCs on the allotment, so I couldn't have one, unfortunately, but that's the way it goes. Digger says, watering can where I can. I educated a few others on the site to use a can only. Time, how long those hoses take to fill. Do you water the bed for that long with a hose? No. Yeah. Yeah, it's all about not wasting a lot of that watering, isn't it? It's such a precious resource. I think we have to try and hold on to it as much as possible. Rob says, interestingly, I would never use dip troughs, never know what is in the water. So we have strict rules on the dip troughs. They are purely for watering cans and for watering people have chickens on our allotment, so they're pretty good. I've got to say, nobody puts anything in there that shouldn't be in there, and if chickens start dying, that's when I would question it. Luckily, it doesn't happen. Moneyboot says, I use nets to protect crops where required. Nets are good. The problem lies with the users do not secure the edges fully, which can lead to wildlife getting trapped and suffering. I totally agree with that, Nigel. For me, they get in my way. This is my ADD brain. They get in the way and they slow me down. But I have had to cut away, not my nets, somebody else's nets, where the blackbird was stuck in it, and I had to cut it away. The poor thing had been there for hours because it just wasn't tight, and the bird got trapped in it. That's why I hate those sort of nets. Max Restore has joined and Jamie's little allotment over on Instagram. Welcome along. Please do add any thoughts. I tell you what, lots of comments coming in. Stuart Jackson, have free water butts. Try not to use tap water if I can help it. I can always use a can. Absolutely. Graham Plotty, well, why can't you have ILBCs? Mine are gutted from a shed. That seems crazy. You can't collect as much as possible. It is crazy. Our allotment council, they banned basically IBCs, and we were only allowed 2 water butts per allotment. Crazy. Well, I don't know why it came in. I'd sooner have LBCs. I don't know why that rule was there. It is just stupid. Stupid rule. Benno says, going to visit a garden centre next week to see if they do anything different than at home. Won't be Monday as it's another bank holiday. Are you still in Spain? Yes, you are still in Spain, aren't you? It's bank holiday. There we go. Scott says, I use a hose pipe with water pumped from my IBC tank, to save time trips to and from the tanks to fill up. Yeah. All right. I would love an LBC. We're not allowed it. Bethan says, when I had my allotment, we had no water on site, so I had to make my own. So it was no dig and lots of mulching. Watering or not having water on site must be really difficult to cope with, I've got to say. I don't know how some people do it, in all honesty. Right, I tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to pot up this week's Sow Along, which is the seed of the month in collaboration with Premier Seeds Direct. I'm going to put this up now, and then we'll come back to the conversation. Well, indeed, it is time for our weekly Sow Along, but this week's Sow Along is actually our seed of the month in collaboration with Premier Seeds Direct. If you haven't heard of Premier Seeds Direct, they sell pretty much every seed you can imagine at very reasonable prices. Very reasonable, I've got to say. Not only that, I've also got a discount code for you, VegPod10, to save yourself an extra 10% off as well. Please do go check them out. So this seed that we are sowing this week is sweet corn, and it's a variety called Rising Sun. This is a pretty sweet early variety, so if we have a crap summer, there's a good chance we will still get sweet corn. Now I'm going to sow these sweet corn inside my root trainers because I find the root trainers give the roots plenty of room to grow down, as well as when we come to plant them out, there's very little disturbance. Sweet corn roots do not really like being disturbed, so this just makes it a little bit easier for us. Now all we're going to do is take a single seed and plant them in each cell about 2 centimeters deep. Nothing complicated about that. And once we've sown them all up, you get 50 in a packet for just over £1. I can't remember the exact price, but 50 in a packet. If you grow 50 sweet corn, that will give you more than enough sweet corn to last all year. 2 centimeters deep. Leave them in the root trainers, and I put them on my shelf and give them a good watering until they germinate. Now you could use elderberry pots. I use root trainers because that's what I have. Now I reckon germination would happen within a week, and within 2 weeks they will be ready to go outside. In the meantime, I'm just going to prepare the ground that they are to grow in. Going to make sure all weeds are removed and plenty of compost added. Sweet corn does like plenty of compost. It is a member of the grass family, so if you have a lot of grass like couch grass growing well on your area, chances are that sweet corn is going to grow well as well. Just a little tip I've learned over the years. In terms of once we plant out our sweet corn, it's just a case of keeping them moist. There's no point trying to feed them. I don't find that feeding really does any difference. It's just important to plant them out in a block as opposed to rows. Reason being, sweet corn is wind pollinated, so it requires wind to blow the pollen and land in all the places. One thing they do require is lots of sun. They love to sunbathe out in the sun, as I'm sure many of us like to do anyway, especially on a hot day like today. As easy as that. The only other thing to remember is when it comes to harvesting sweet corn, make sure your sweet corn is fully ripe. You're looking for the tassels on the end to go brown, and you peel back the husk, pierce a bit of sweet corn, and the liquid that comes out should be a milky liquid. If it's lumpy and solid, it's overripe. If it's watery, it's not quite ripe enough, so give it another week or so. Then it's a case of rushing it home and getting that sweet corn in the pan of water to make sure the starch do not turn to sugars. You've got about an hour after harvesting before the starch turns to the sugars turn to starch. So rush home in an hour, get in a pan of hot water. That way your sweet corn stays sweet. Then it can go in the freezer or whatever you might be doing. It's easy as that. I'm going to get out this hot greenhouse because it is rather warm. I'll see you back in the podding shed. Well, sorry, that caught me off guard there for a minute. I was just taking a little nap, shall we say. Yeah, the sweet corn. Any tips on growing sweet corn is always very, very welcome. What was I reading? Seed to Table says I use nets on things that get eaten so quickly. Otherwise, I'm going to try grazers and really hope it works, as I don't like nets and worry about wildlife getting stuck in them and they look untidy. I would say I have found that grazers does work, but I would start spraying it before you plant it out, and when the plants are young and still under protection, just so as they grow, it sort of soaks it in. That's what I would say. Slugs and snails here at home have really been a problem, but the grazers does seem to work. Toby Stream says there's some odd rules on allotment plots. No water butts, no compost bins, no sheds. Every allotment plot is different, isn't it? It's just why it is. Graham Plotty says, think I'm going to zoom to the plot and check on what's dead. Bethan says, lack of water on site is one reason I gave up my allotment. I don't blame you, actually. I think that must be the hardest thing to cope with on any allotment, no water. Rob says, I could not manage without water on site. I totally agree. Unless you're allowed to pot up sheds and collect as much rainwater as possible. Even then, I think it would be a struggle. Digwell says, Premier Seeds Direct are sending me replacement pack for the zero germination ones I had. Marigolds, brassicas, beetroot. Just hope my raisin sun corn is okay. Not a happy chappy. That's interesting. I've never had a single problem with any of the Premier Seeds packs I've ever bought. So that is quite worrying. You've had zero germination so much. Derek Stream says, I sowed my sweet corn direct in the soil the other day. Then I found out badgers will have a lot, so I might never see any. Badgers can be a problem with sweet corn, granted. They can very much be a bit of a problem with sweet corn. I remember on my old allotment, people gave up growing sweet corn because the badgers would come along and they'd basically chew at the bottom of the sweet corn plant to knock it over so they could get to the corn. Very, very clever. But I did find that if I've got these huge boxes and I grew sweet corn in that, never had any problems. I was the envy of the entire allotment plot. But yeah, badgers can be a bit of a problem. Growing plotty, and if you're growing mini pop, don't accidentally let it get massive. Good tip there. Very good tip. Jenny says, I have sweet corn and baby corn. I can't wait. Fantastic. Ballycillian Allotment Man is here. Sorry I'm late. Just woke up. How are you doing, my friend? I let everybody know what was going on last week. So great to see you. Hope you are feeling much better. Yeah. Nigel says, Bally, hope you're feeling well. Rob says, I dare not drink at allotment, would never go home. Yeah, we've all made that mistake, haven't we? I don't drink as a general rule, but every now and then I do get a craving for just a single bottle of cider. And one day I was down on the allotment. My sister came down with her ex-husband and the kids. They brought down a bottle of cider and it went down so well. It was a beautiful sunny day. Ballycillian says, feeling not too bad. Medication makes me tired all the time. Just make sure you're looking after yourself, Ballycillian. That's the most important thing. I said last week, Ballysillian had just been in hospital for quite a serious operation, so he's been absent for the last couple of weeks for that reason. But no, I think he's on the mend. He's on the mend. Digwell says grazers change the instructions to state spray daily for 3-4 days before planting out so the leaves build up the chemical. Is chemical the right word? As I understand it, it's an organic. I mean, chemicals can be organic, I guess. But yeah, spray them before to build up. That's my understanding as well. Turbo Stream says, I hate nets, but have to use them or the birds would eat the lot. I do try and ensure they are fixed down so the birds can't get in. Well, my experiments with grazers have been really paying off. So look at that. Look at that. Think about that. Nigel says, I like to be 100% sure sprays will work against pests before casting aside my nets. Otherwise, 12 months effort down the drain. Totally understand that. I do completely understand that, Nigel, actually. And it's always a concern. That's what I tend to do is I spray all my plants and I might put one out, see if it gets attacked before putting the rest out, just to make sure. It seems to work. It does seem to work. As I said, I'm quite a fan of grazers now. I think it was Digro who put me onto it, and then I saw him at a press event and never looked back. Kate says, I've seen some people use socks to protect their sweet corn when it's bigger. I've never heard of that one. I've never heard of that one at all, but that sounds quite intriguing. Yep, I have been trying that slug stopper stuff from Garden Press event. Had hard to tell how good it is. Slug stopper, was that from? I can't remember. There's so much going on at GPU, wasn't there? Rob says people near my plot grow. I think it's a maze. Nothing touches it. People near my plot grow. I think it's amazing. Nothing touches it. It does happen, doesn't it? Sometimes some people just don't look after their plot or don't seem to do anything to stop these birds and anything, or what slugs and snails, and nothing touches it. It does make you wonder what they're doing differently, doesn't it? Hope you're doing well and on the mend to Ballysillian. Digwa says, yes, calcium is a chemical. Of course it is. Yeah, it is on the periodic scale, isn't it? I think that you kind of hit upon the point I've always had this trouble with, in that we talk so much at being organic gardeners of not using chemicals, but you could almost say everything's a chemical. And calcium, which is natural, it's inside us. It is a chemical. So yeah. I think it was just yeah. You know what? You kind of get what I'm getting at there. I'm probably not making much sense, but that's what's new. What's new? Tailgate Stream says, we have a badger set on the fence between the allotment and the school, so they are free to roam the site along with the foxes. Hey, badgers, foxes, they need somewhere to live, and I think allotments are good places for them. I think it's important to remember they may eat some of your crops. We'll call them sacrificial crops. Let them have a few as long as you get some as well. But foxes particularly, I think they're great for controlling rat populations. And rats are, I mean, I hate killing anything unnecessarily. Rats are part of our ecosystem as well. They eat slugs and snails, but the foxes help control those numbers naturally as well. Alison has joined evening all. Sorry, I've not been around. I've had a lot going on. Sadly, I lost one of my guinea pigs last Saturday, and it's been hard to get out. I'm very sorry to hear that, Alison. It's always hard when you lose a pet, isn't it? It's like losing a member of your family. Yeah, exactly with you. Digwell says slug stopper made by Effective. I don't think I saw them. Which is quite amazing, considering how much was going on there. Maize looks very similar to sweet corn, very popular with African growers. Oh, sorry. That's what you were trying to get to. Yeah. Yes. Sorry. I think I've seen. Is that the like 12-foot tall stuff that looks like sweet corn but grows 12-foot tall? Turbo Stream says, last year I tried laying brambles around plants and that seemed to deter some slugs. I've heard that. I've not tried it myself. Um, I've not tried it myself. I'm just trying to think, can I pull it off? I don't have brambles here. I have a few, actually. But then Roxy will probably try and chew on them more than anything. Digwell says, organic is a misnomer. Strychnine, arsenic, Ebola virus are all you are right there. That's something I've always sort of thought. Organic and chemicals and organic are a bit of a misnomer. They do sort of conjure up images in our heads that aren't quite true. So I'm totally with you on that. Yeah. They use maize for animal feed as well. Is it the ones that get like 12 foot tall, maybe even taller? That looks like sweet corn. Let me know. Still, we have a look at your photos. It's that time of the week. Let's just quickly check on Instagram, actually. Karen Cook has joined. Welcome along. Let's have a look at your photos that have been, I think these are all pretty much posted in our Facebook group, except one that was sent over by email. This is Scott. He's dug up some fennel and he's found that the fennel that is self-seeded has grown better than the ones he sowed himself. So it goes on to say, isn't Mother Nature fantastic? You know, there's a lot to be said for Mother Nature. Now, we've been talking about grazers quite a bit tonight. She's she's brought this list load. This is Chili Kate. She's got a grazers one for pigeons, rabbits, and deer. Grazers 2 for slugs and snails. And grazers 3 for butterflies, caterpillars, and cabbage white, etc., etc. I'm using them, and they are working really well for me. Rob has planted up his cucumber. I've got to say, this cucumber looks really, really, really cool, and I can see there's already flowers on it. So it's looking great, isn't it? It goes to show, you know, here we are in May. Some people say this is the ideal time to sow cucumbers. Whereas some of us have already got our cucumbers in and growing. There's no set rules. There's no set rules. Now, talking of sweet corn, Nathan has got his sweet corn ready to be planted out tomorrow. This is looking fantastic, actually, I've got to say, and good load of sweet corn too. When did you sow those? When did you sow those to get them ready to go out tomorrow or maybe today? Now, Steve took all this lot to a plant sale. This is Digwell, of course. I'm wondering how much he actually sold. I've seen some photos. It looks like he did a good lot, but I'll be interested to see actual figures in terms of percentage of what was sold. Kate has planted up, this is the other Kate. She's planted up her first raised bed. Other Kate, sorry, I didn't mean that in the way it sounded, but just to try and avoid any confusion. First raised bed planted up. She's just moved house, so getting gardening underway is always a good start, isn't it? One of the things we had to do when we moved into this house was straight away get gardening as well. Now, Stuart has also been selling at a plant sale. He's already said he raised nearly, was it 290 quid this weekend selling at the plant sale? Fantastic work indeed. All his goes for the brain tumour charity. The Beddoes peas has sprouted. He talked about them last week, just sowing them on the hope that he's going to make sure he gets peas before his grandkids. They have sprouted. Stephen has talking of putting covers over his strawberries. These are his strawberry beds. He's rather pleased with them. Because so they do look quite neat and tidy as well, but covered over really, really well. This comes back to what we were saying about netting our crops. So please do keep sharing your photos. You can post them in our Facebook group. You can send to me via social media or email me, richard@theveggroundpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@theveggroundpodcast.co.uk. So that maize, yes, 12-foot tall. That's them. Yes, I have seen those. They do look quite stunning, don't they? They probably won't be allowed in my allotment. They'd probably be classed as too tall, but interesting. I do love when we see people growing things that we don't normally grow ourselves. I do think that opens our eyes up a bit more and creates this sort of fascination, something different to try and grow and see what happens. Beddoes says, evening, everybody here is giving away oranges and lemons by leaving buckets full by their gates. Wouldn't that be fantastic to be able to do that here? Oranges and lemons just given away because we have so many of them. I do like citrus plants. I do. I really do. I'm just thinking about my citrus plants I have at the moment. They're going to need a bit of attention soon, thinking about it. Digwell says he raised £120 for the charity. Fantastic. What charity was it, Digwell? And in terms of percentage, how many of your plants sold, both to you and Stuart? What plants seem to sell the best out of interest, that is? Beddoes and a few others saying well done to all the charity growers. Fantastic, fantastic. Jenny says that maize grows all around us in local feeds. It's what natural growers use, I believe, for their compost. I think you're right. I think it is used quite a bit in compost, thinking about it. I know of a few companies that talk about they use maize fields. So kind of makes sense. Kind of makes sense. Just remember to press the like, thumbs up button. Yes, I keep forgetting that. Please do give us a like. Please give us a thumbs up, a follow, a subscribe. And don't forget to click the notifications so you know when we go live. If I don't say it, I get told off. So got to remind you all. Got to remind you all. Rob says there's people that fill up the 2 allotments with maize and sell it on a market stall. Fantastic. So what is it like a corn, this stuff, this maize? Is it a corn that's produced, a bit like sweet corn, or is it more like maize, as in the stuff grown for farmers on mass scale? Is it something along those lines? I have no idea. It kind of got me intrigued. Now, I did have a quick check on the discount code I was talking about earlier. It is from Aeropots. Was it Aeropots? You got me. I swear, Autopot. Sorry, Autopot. That is it. Autopot. You'll hear it more on the podcast tomorrow and a video coming out later this week as well. Autopot. They very kindly have sent me a discount code for you to use. The discount code is Auto10RVG. Auto10RVG for 10% off. That's all in one word, all in capitals. Autopots, they are basically a self-watering system. You have a large reservoir and they've got this little contraption, this little valve that floods a tray up with water and it controls it quite nicely. It seems to work quite well. I've got a set that I'm testing at the moment. Fingers crossed it's going to work well. But if you are interested in that, especially if you're going away on a holiday, they've got quite a few different ranges. Autopot might be something to look at. Digwell says 95% sold. That's fantastic, isn't it? 57 out of 60 tomatoes, no common ones. All cucumbers gone. Half of the microgreens sold. Chilies and peppers all gone for the Air Ambulance Society. Fantastic, fantastic. Just goes to show that people do want to buy plants. And if you can get to the right place to sell them, people will buy them. Rob says, not sure what they do to it before they eat it. I'll be intrigued. I would be intrigued as to what happens with it. Stuart Jackson says, I took 15 mushroom trays of veg plants to the sale, mostly peas, beans, cucumbers, and courgettes this week. Then the same number of flowers, about 50% of the sales were veg. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. 50% of the sales were veg. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because there's obviously people out there who do want to buy plants. Even though garden centres and places like that say they're not selling as much, I don't believe that for 1 second. Digwell says, next year I will grow more cherry tomatoes. Every man and his dog wanted cherries. Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, I'm finding this all very intriguing because market research, shall we say. Anne says, our local farm maize crops get completely shredded for cattle feed. And that's after the deer have munched their share. Interesting indeed. Interesting. Deer. I do enjoy deer, but I've heard rumours that the populations are getting out of control now and may have to have something done. Joe's Patch says, when I was a wee nipper, Dad would stop a car and send us into a farmer's field to get a few cobs for tea that night. Not sure if maize or sweet corn. You never know, do you? never know. Those were the days when you could get away with it. Now the farmers, quite rightly, would hate for people to do that. I think they make some flour from it. Interesting indeed. I'll be intrigued to hear what is actually used for it. Chili Cake says sweet corn is a type of maize. Maize is used in different ways all over the road. I love proper maize tortillas. Yeah, me too. I do love proper maize tortillas as well. Perhaps we may have to grow some maize to make our own tortillas one day. That might be something we investigate into as well. That'd be fun, won't it? That would be very fun. Digwell says I'll put a before and after pic on a Facebook site. That'd be great. Yeah, and if you're not in a Facebook group, go and sign up. It's well worth checking out. There's a lot of conversation going on there at the moment. There's been a few videos going up as well, which is great to see. And I really want to get more of it going on. You know, and the good thing is I don't have to do much admin on there either. I pretty much leave it to run its own. Everybody looks out after everybody else. It's really, really good. And there's always people happy to help. Benno says, sorry, I have to leave you now. The pool opened yesterday and I haven't done my 50 lengths yet. I wish I was going to dip my toes in to see if it was warm on the way to the bar. All right, Benno's. All right for some indeed. And says maize is less sweet. Kind of makes sense. It does make a lot of sense indeed. But I think it'd be interesting as well to see if we can get it to grow on the allotment. Rob says every now and then one of our local parks closed for a while so they can cull the deer. I'm hearing it's over the country, but that's another story. Graham Plotty says we're at the allotment with her. Excellent stuff. Still not got a good signal. We know the trouble with signal, don't we? Digwell says many fall into the trap of growing flint corn to eat, but it's for popcorn. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Growing your own popcorn is a delight as well, isn't it? My wife loves popcorn. I can't stand the stuff, but my wife loves popcorn. Healthy snack, she calls it. When you can make your own from growing your own, it's fantastic, and it's so cheap. Andrew Knight says, evening all, sorry I'm late, still light here and have been out in the fields. My neighbours planted a whole field of maize, sweet corn, don't know which is more appropriate. Fantastic. Seed to table, Scott says maize porridge is a staple food in Africa. That sounds really intriguing, doesn't it? I'm going to have to find out more about this maize. Sweet corn is a variety of maize with high sugar content, unlike field corn varieties which are harvested when the kernels are dry and mature and used for grain. Sweet corn is picked when immature and prepared eaten as a vegetable. There we go, from an ex-farmer. I hate popcorn, says, well, I'm with you. I'm not keen on the stuff either. Andrew, my primary gardening tactics is to see what the neighbours are doing, far more years of experience than myself, and then I just follow the lead. Yeah, we started out with that conversation, didn't we? What gardening methods do you use, or do you adhere to yourself? Well, guys, I'm going to quickly throw up the mission video. This was the mission you set for me last week. It was a good one, actually. If only I could have done it correctly. Let's see what we've got. Okay, well, this week you set me the challenge to graft a branch onto a plant. Now, I had a bit of a search around to find something I can do it with. And what I came up with is this gooseberry plant. We rescued this gooseberry plant. It was looking a little bit shabby at the end of last year. It's going to need to go into a bigger pot quite soon. What I thought we'd do is do a cut onto this gooseberry plant on this branch here and reattach it, which is essentially grafting. So let's get into it, shall we? Essentially, grafting is the attachment of two branches that may have snapped together off, or maybe for propagation or various things like that. For the purpose of this, we're just going to make a nice clean cut with a pair of sharp secateurs, and that's detached the two branches. Well, that one and that one. Now, it's fairly simple to do this. I'm using duct tape to hold the bits together. It was suggested, of course, last week by a professional to use grafting tape, which is better. Completely agree, would be better to use grafting tape, but I didn't have any grafting tape, and I kind of feel that most of us won't have grafting tape available all the time, or need it. Roxy, can you be quiet? Nobody wants to hear you. So a little piece of duct tape like so. What we're going to do is reattach it like this. Now if you're in the winter, well, any time of year, a branch snaps on any plant, it's as simple as reattaching it back together and holding it together with some sort of tape. As I said, I'm using duct tape. My worry with that is that it is a little bit of weight, or too much weight on the back of it. So I'm going to take another piece of duct tape. In fact, I'm going to take two pieces of duct tape. And what I'm going to do is just support it with this bit of stick as well, just to hold that joint to stop any strength or any problems with that. Now we'll have to keep a close eye on this over the coming weeks to see if the two pieces have reattached themselves. There we go. May not be pretty, but it will do the job. So there we go. One grafted gooseberry branch back together. Whether you think I have passed this challenge, let us know in the comments. If you've got any tips or anything you want to suggest, let us know in the comments as well. Right, back to the studio. There we go, grafted gooseberry. Now, I would have liked to do something a little bit different. I just didn't have the ability to try and do something that has been something I've wanted to do for a while. Talking of grafting, and that was take an apple tree and I take branches from other varieties of apple tree and graft them on. So you end up with 4 different varieties of apples on one tree. That might be something we do in the future, but do you think I passed that? Was that mission accomplished or not? I think it goes to show just how easy grafting can be. Some people, I think, make grafting very complicated, where you cut bits away and you do other things and things like that. It's simple. It's so simple, and there's so many things we can graft and make better. It's another thing just to experiment with. Time Stream says Digwell amazes me with his knowledge, and because Digwell says all corn is maize, like all cabbage are brassicas. Absolutely right there. Absolutely right there. Nigel says cling film is good when no grafting tape is available. Indeed, it is. I mean, I've used sellotape in the past when it was an emergency. I snapped a tomato in half, a tomato plant in half. This is when I lived in my flat, and so all I had at hand was some sellotape, and I literally just taped it together with sellotape, and it worked. It's not so much about grafting tape is great, but how many of you actually have grafting tape in your garden? And if something snaps or breaks, what can you do to grab it? Joe's Patch, watching this last week, gave me the idea of trying to graft a tomato, use spare plants, and it's still alive. So fingers crossed. It is so incredible when you can do that. Do that well. Rob says, good luck, Joe. And Joe says, cheers, Rob. It's a bit of fun on a Sunday night. Nigel says to Andrew, a good way to learn. And Rob says, passed with flying colours. Thank you. So we'll pull that as mission accomplished. Time Extreme says, never tried grafting, can barely take a cutting that lives a few days. Give it a try, and let us know how you get on. So many different tips and tricks. As I said, I try and keep it simple because I think some people overcomplicate things, and I like to keep it simple. So that's what I do. We can make it more complicated if anybody wants. Stuart says, I may use this video for my next garden lesson as I have to show different ways of propagation at school. Yeah, go for it. I mean, grafting. I mean, you've all heard of grafted tomato plants where you have like um, egg and chip plants is probably a good example, isn't it? Where you have the aubergine, no, potatoes and tomatoes, no, tomatoes, potato roots, and the um, aubergine top. So you get potatoes underground and aubergines above. I don't find you get much of either, but it's something interesting to try. Nigel says there are different methods of grafting, tip, bud, tongue, etc. Yeah, it gets complicated, doesn't it, in some ways? But they can all work quite well. What else have we got? A lot of folk replant the side shoots of tomatoes. Yes, they do. When you pinch out your tomatoes, they pop those straight in the ground. In the UK, we don't quite have summers that are long enough to cope with that, unfortunately. I think a lot of people across the pond in America will do that, and places, probably Spain as well. Here, I don't think we quite get long enough summers to really pull that off. But hey, if you can try it, you've got nothing to lose, have you? If you give it a go. Now, on that note, I just want to ask everybody, have you got a suggestion for a mission to do for next week? In terms of sowing seed, I'm going to throw this open to you as well. What seed shall I sow next week for a sow along? Idea being we all try and sow these seeds and see how these seeds get on and compare them with each other. I meant to take photos of all the past seeds, but I never quite got on top of it. But yeah, I need a mission, a suggestion for a seed, and I can't remember what the topic we said we were going to do next week. Not that I'm winding it up just yet. We've still got quite a few minutes to go. Anything going on over on Instagram? Skinny Jean Garner is over there. You're live on Instagram. Haven't you seen this? As we've been doing this for a few weeks now. Tom Woodstock is over there, and Compost Club and the Restoration Physio. A few others going on there as well. Seed to Table says mission, make a scarecrow. Make a scarecrow. I like that. I like that. A suggestion a lot. Does everybody agree with that? Rob says this reminds me I need to sow my beans. Yeah, we're getting where with those. Basil ready for tomato plants now. Have you done basil? I can't remember. Sorry. I don't think we have done basil, but I like the idea of basil. It's one on my list of things I need to sow, so that would make sense. Digret says, I did a potato, spud bottom, tomato top, waste of time as I got half the expected yield from each. That was what I found as well. Yeah. And we can all come up with names for it, for the scarecrow. Yeah. We're going to do, scarecrow seems like a good one. Swede for the seed. Well, it's between Swede and basil. Swede and basil. I'll let you guys decide which one you want. Nigel says planting side shoot does work and prosidic produces the crops. The late green side up, Steve, did it often. I've always found it depends on the summer, I think. My experience anyway. Produces a crop. There we go. That's the thing. Stuart says, I think a scarecrow sounds like a good idea. Yeah, we're going to do the scarecrow. Yes, he did, Nigel. And if I remember, he used Crimson Crush. Definitely a scarecrow or scarecrows. Richard and Amanda and a Roxy. That is a challenge. I see what I can do. I'm going to make at least one scarecrow. I'll put it like that. I'm just saying sugar snaps while listening direct. Fantastic. Anybody else out in their garden or allotment while watching and listening to this show? Sowed that for the seed I grew some last year, tasty. Swede for the seed I grew last year, tasty but small. So that's 2 votes for seed, 1 for basil at the moment. If it works, if the shoots are taken early enough in the season, that's my kind of understanding as well. As I said, you've got nothing to lose by trying, have you? You've got to remove the side shoots anyway. plant them in. They're not taking up that much space. Got nothing to lose by trying. It's just my experience is they need a long summer for it to be really successful. Just my experience. That's all I say. Excuse me. I've had this really bad cold all week. I don't know if anybody heard. Really took the energy out of me. I struggled to keep going this week, but on the mend now. I've just got a bit of a dicky, a sore throat. But I was debating whether I was suffering from hay fever because my nose was just screaming and running all the time. I don't normally suffer from hay fever, but it did feel like I had hay fever. I don't know if there's something going on at the moment where a lot of grass cutting has caused it. I don't know. Not sure I would try doing it as I sow enough tomatoes for the season. That's true. That's true. Chili Kate says, I was going to plant Swede, so you are very welcome to join me, Richard. Swede. I think, okay, that's 3 votes for Swede. I'm going to be sowing basil anyway, but 3 votes for Swede. Benno says, still here swimming, can't wait. Banana tomorrow. Can be grafting between different trees, pears and apples, for example. Can grafting be between different trees, apples and pears, or pears and apples, for example? I think it can. But I'm only sort of firing things off in my mind. I think it can, Ian. I think you can graft a pear onto an apple. Nigel says, I've just removed all my side shoots. Next lot, I will pop one up and we'll keep track. Fantastic. Make us a video about it, Nigel, and send it in, and we'll see how it works out for you. That would be great. Chili Cake says, pollen is very high at the moment. It's totally floored me this week. Perhaps it was hay fever then. I don't normally suffer from hay fever, though, so I'll be very surprised. Swede would be great. That looks like it's going to be Swede. Apples and pears use different rootstock. That's true, but my thinking, I'm sure I've read somewhere, somebody basically, you would have apple and pears growing on the same tree just by grafting branches onto branches. So it's not so much grafting it onto the rootstock, it's grafting it onto the branches. I could be wrong, but it does make me think, is it possible? And could that be something we try one day in the future? Steve at Greenside Up used to always plant tomato side shoots. I did the same. They grew really well, but did end up with far too many plants. Cool. That's interesting. Different rootstocks are used to grow many fruits. Stuart Jackson, is it too late to sow broad beans as the children are asking for next week? Is it too late for broad beans? Is it too late for broad beans? You might just get away with it. But see what happens. Kate says the rapeseed cross are playing havoc with my hay fever. Maybe it is hay fever then. It really did floor me this week. That was an April Fool, Richard. Talking about the apple and pear. I read it in a book. So I'd be surprised if it was an April Fool. But I just understood it. There was apple and pears growing on the side. I don't know. Nigel says apples use a malin and pears usually quince rootstock. Yeah. So interesting, isn't it? Quince rootstock and pears. So 2 families go together. I do wonder if pears and apples could be rooted together. I know there was somebody he did like 30 different apples or 30 different apple varieties on one tree. So I think it's called a family apple tree, if I remember correctly. Yeah. We'll see what we're trying to experiment one day. Digress says, funny how everyone is citing Steve as doing planting side sheet thing. I thought everyone did it. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's tried it, is what I would say. Nigel says, sorry, got rid of wrong end of a stick. Pear and apple can be grafted together. Pom. Yes, I thought they could. I was damn sure they could. So, yeah. Stuart Jackson says, I think it will sow the beans, then I won't need to keep the seed until next year. Or save them until autumn and sow them in the autumn, depending on the variety. But you've got nothing to lose by trying. My broad beans are not very big, even sown in mid-March, so you might be okay, Stuart. All you waste are a few seeds. Indeed. I've got my first broad beans just starting to produce. So I reckon the end of this week we will be harvesting our first broad beans. Should be fun. Should be fun. Tilly Phil says rapeseed has been playing havoc with some horse racing stables in this last week as well. Remember reading and thinking about it. It must be really bad to affect how horses are racing as well. Oh, so perhaps it was hay fever. Interesting. It really did knock me for six though, but I don't suffer from hay fever. The rootstocks used for apple trees and pear trees are different species and not compatible with each other. There is a hybrid between an apple and a pear called a papple. Never heard of a papple, but yeah, I'm just now. Beddoes has mentioned about an apple tree and a pear tree being on the same sort of on the same rootstock on the same tree. Can we do it? Might be something we try and experiment with one day. Anybody got a suggestion for a subject for next week? We're going to be sowing seeds and we're going to be making a scarecrow. But subject for next week. I know last week you came up with loads of ideas, and I said I had no chance of remembering them. But if anybody's got a suggestion, that would be great as well. I say broad beans in spring, they never make it through the wet, cold winters here. Yeah, of course. Right, we have had a couple of photos as well come in for your harvests. This was a suggestion that came in a few weeks ago. Actually, we start showing off our harvests, and you guys have certainly taken to it. Stuart has harvested this load of rhubarb. Looks delicious. And plenty of rhubarb crumbles and things going on there. So what did you make out of it, Stuart? And from school, he also harvested all these leeks. It's so good to be still harvesting leeks in May, isn't it? I love it. I love it this year. But they are coming to an end. We've just harvested the last of our leeks as well this year. So it's kind of cool. Stuart Jackson says you can get hay fever at any age, so I've been told. It just really did knock me for six, and I thought it was a bad cold, even though I felt okay. I'm just really tired, but yeah, okay. I've learned something tonight. I learned something every week with you guys. Digwell says rapeseed pollen gave me a mega asthma attack this time last year. Luckily, the farmer has moved where he grows it this year. Okay, there's been a lot of rapeseed about as well, I've seen. So yeah, maybe it was hay fever. Maybe Amanda was right. Don't tell her that because I will not hear the end of it. I thought I had a cold, but maybe it was hay fever. Nigel says, just looked on Google and mixed answers about grafting onto each other, but definitely not on respective rootstocks. No, I understand not on respective rootstocks, but I'm talking on branch to branch. So you can have a pear and an apple tree on the same plant. I'll be intrigued. There might be something we try in the future. Ian Bennett, I only ask as I lasted both at the same time. I lost both at the same time a couple of years ago, and the pear tree is thriving, but the apples. I only ask as I planted both at the same time a couple of years ago. The pear tree is thriving, but the apples are lagging far behind. That can depend on the age of a plant when you got them, and also some trees don't fruit for a couple of years or so many years, depending on the varieties as well. So could be something going on there. Rob says, I used to suffer very badly hay fever when I was about 20. Then when I was about 20, it just went. Interesting. Stuart says, the rhubarb has ended up in the freezers. We had so much. Message for Amanda. You are correct. Don't tell her that. Let's just quickly check on Instagram. Nothing going on there. Jenny says, my broad bean packet says sow till June. Go for it. particularly Sutton Dwarf. There you go. Go for it. I only sow mine in autumn because I'm the only one that really eats broad beans, so we don't want too many, and just one bed in the autumn gives us enough for our stock. Digwell says hay fever is only really called that by long-term sufferers. Everyone is susceptible to a runny nose or eyes from excessive pollen. Yeah, for me, it was just the way it just completely knackered me. I felt achy sort of joints. My nose was bunged up, and a bit of a sore throat. But hey, and I was coughing and sneezing a lot, which probably is where the achy joints came from. Nigel says, I suffer from both asthma and hay fever. Not very nice when you get both together. Yeah, I bet. Especially being a gardener as well, like yourself. Interesting times, isn't it? How being a gardener with suffering from hay fever does it cause issues or what have you? Well, we've got a few minutes to go for this show. It's been a really good conversation. I've got to say, I really enjoyed chatting with you guys as always. But we do need a subject for next week. Anybody got any suggestions, or do I come up with a subject for next week? I did think we could talk about growing in pots and share your tips on pot gardening. I thought that might be a good subject to discuss. What do you think? Before we all go, says Robs, I just want to say I think this has been one of the best lives I've been on. Thank you. Thank you. I think it has been a good talk, actually. It's always good when you guys, you always do, but when the conversation is flowing like you guys have been doing, it really does make the show 10 times better. It may mean I don't always get to read everybody's comments, but I try to. Great chat tonight. Rob says raised beds. Could we discuss raised beds? Subject could be a free-for-all, anything goes, or a general chit-chat. That's not a bad idea, actually. Digwell says, pot a puff of pollen and puff it on your face. Yeah. Trying to make it work for me. I have those tablets for my hay fever from the doc. Clears it up in no time and no drowsiness. Yeah, interesting. Jenny, growing in pots is good. Useful way to make different growing conditions. Yeah. I've just potted on my amaranth. Hot biscuits with you. Enjoyed the company. Indeed. I think we'll do pots and raised beds next week. And then the week after, Tyree Stream, please remind me, we'll do the general chit-chat because I like the idea, free-for-all, a general chit-chat. Yeah. Right, guys. It is literally a few seconds to 7:30, so I'm going to start wrapping this one up. This has been a really good conversation. I know you guys have enjoyed it. A lot of chat going on with you. We'll do the same again next Sunday at 6, and the same sort of thing. Get you guys just talking and sharing your thoughts on this subject. Pots and raised bed gardening. Get your tips going. If you want to send in any videos or anything, you can do that. Just head to wetransfer.com and send them to richard@veggroundpodcast.co.uk and I can play them in. Same with photos. Paste them in our Facebook group. Send to me via email, richard@veggroundpodcast.co.uk or through social media. Always appreciated. Always welcome. Right, guys. Thanks so much. And you take care. And I'll see you again next Sunday at 6. Take care, guys.